Welcome back to Digital Futures Education. In this episode, we're going to do a deep dive into the study materials for the new CompTIA A curriculum. So let's get started. So welcome to Module 1, A+ Core 1, Exam 2020-1201. So the very first module. And a shift from the old lessons is that we're starting with what does an IT specialist do? Which is a change from the previous lessons that CompTIA had for the first module. The learning outcomes for this module is to prepare for A+ certification by describing what an IT specialist is and their responsibilities, describing the skills an IT specialist needs, describing the role of certifications for an IT specialist, and we move right into lesson 1.1, the hero of problem solving. The role of an IT specialist, problem solver, what their responsibilities are, range of issues, ever-changing daily tasking, no routine. And that's completely true. An IT specialist in troubleshooting is never going to have the same day twice. Even if they do their best to try to plan it, troubleshooting is going to take them in a wide variety of directions during any course of a day. So this is just getting you prepared for the role of an IT specialist and the necessity of problem solving. Skills and abilities, slide 1 and 2. So we're seeing a new focus on the soft skills as well with this new curriculum. We have problem solving, use a consistent process, communication, written, oral, and what's effective. So how are we writing down and having that as part of problem solving process? How are we speaking to others and utilizing that as part of our problem-solving process? And what's effective in the workplace? Also with organization, having a clean workspace, easier to locate tools and parts, particularly if you're doing a lot of repairs. Organized thoughts that then are communicated to stakeholders. And that's another important thought, is ultimately communicating if there's issues or technical problems that others need to know about or important people within an organization. How do you communicate these elements to others, and how do you effectively do it so that they understand properly what you mean and the impact of the decisions? Skills and abilities, technical knowledge, hardware knowledge, software including operating systems and applications, networking, cloud, and security. So that's a broad range. Hardware, knowing the parts of the computing systems, software, including operating systems and applications. So not only the operating system that a particular device has, but also the applications that run on that device. And then you have networking, cloud, and security, which CompTIA touches on each one of those specifically. So here's a little lesson review. The hero of problem solving. The role of the IT specialist, which we talked about in brief, and what their skills and abilities, what those skill sets are. So CompTIA is taking a little bit of a different turn now, where they're trying to better prepare people with the soft skills and understand the role of an IT specialist in an organization. And they're going to require that as part of that understanding of their exam. Lesson 1.2. Troubleshooting methodology. Now this is a really important part of CompTIA A+. Really important to have this in your wheelhouse. Really important to have this. Best practice methodology. So a best practice methodology is a consistent way to have a very specific method for solving issues that you may come across. You want to determine the cause, symptoms, and consequences of a potential issue, the priority and severity. How important is it? Where do you rank it in terms of priority? Is it part of a critical system? And most severe issues need to be addressed first. So how do you prioritize those issues as they come up? CompTIA troubleshooting methodology. And you're going to have this particularly memorized as you begin to do questions. And understanding question on the exam is the troubleshooting methodology. First, identify the problem. Then establish a theory of probable cause. Then test the theory. Establish a plan of action and implement the solution. Verify system functionality. Document the findings, actions, and outcomes. So all of the questions essentially on a CompTIA exam are structured in a way in which you're going to need to understand the CompTIA troubleshooting methodology in order to properly address scenario-based questions. So understanding this methodology from start to finish is going to help you break down and dissect questions as they come across. First step in this is identify the problem. Gather information from the user. What are the exact error messages appearing on the screen or coming from the speaker? Is anyone else experiencing the same issue? And this is important because then you can compare it to other environments. How long has the problem been occurring? Is it something that just started happening, or has it been coming and going? What changes have been made recently to the system? Were these changes initiated by you or via another support request? So is there a change that could be causing these issues, and was that change made by another technical change prior? Perform backup all critical and important information. Verify customer or client has done so if they're responsible for the system. So just the necessity of performing backups before making any big changes so that none of that critical data in an organization is lost. Establish and test a theory. So here you're going to have conducting research, physically inspecting the system, seeing if there's any physical lights on or error messages that you're receiving. Reproduce the problem. Can the problem that the user has experienced, can it be reproduced so you understand exactly what this issue looks like or acts or performs like? Check system documentation or the owner's manual. Is there something in the documentation or in the owner's manual that this problem occurs or it's a known issue? Ask other technicians for their thoughts. Talk to a previous technician who have worked on the system. Very important step there is basically to ask others that maybe you work with, or even in other organizations, if you feel like you can share and have a question or conversation. What do you think is causing this issue? Why is it happening? And especially someone who's maybe worked on the system before. Read vendor documentation and use the internet to conduct research for possible causes and solution. So you're investigating the vendor documentation, looking for known issues, and you can also utilize documentation that you might find online to conduct research for possible causes or issues that may be causing the issue. You might basically Google it. Is it a known issue that others have experienced? Question the obvious. A very important step here. Never overlook a simple solution such as ensuring the item is turned on or plugged in. Decide if the issue is likely hardware or software related. Determine if the issue is physical or logical. Is it how the system is being used, or is it actually how the system is functioning? Test each theory individually to isolate the problem. So don't try to test multiple theories in one setting. Maybe try one theory at a time and see if each theory works itself out, or before you start to layer attempts at solving the problem. Establish a new theory or escalate. So a very important step here, if your initial theories or idea of what's causing the problem is not solving the problem, there may be the need to escalate the issue to another technician who has additional privileges in the organization, or just bring in additional people to offer their insight into the problem. And especially you want to be sure to escalate the issue if it's beyond your skill level and something you may not know a lot about, beyond your knowledge level, out of the scope of the company policy or warranty documentation. So the third one's a really important thing to think about, in that a company policy around making a change may exist. So you don't want to storm ahead necessarily without speaking to others about making a major change. So having some communication with others in the organization is really essential, just to make sure that what the company policy is. Now, there's also warranty documentation. So that's important because you don't want to void a warranty. You want to make sure that if you're going to take something to the next level or make a change, that you're not voiding the opportunity to then maybe potentially just return this particular item back for a warranty exchange, which is much easier than potentially solving issues that you maybe couldn't even solve in-house. Implement a plan of action. So repair, replace, and also workarounds. Determine if a solution to repair the system is cost effective. Sometimes solutions could cost more than they're really worth. In some cases, it may be just cheaper to replace the item. Not all issues require to be resolved. In some cases, a workaround may be feasible. Sometimes the issue that's happening can be easily worked around, and it's not a big impact, and there's a workaround that just makes sense. And sometimes people are okay with that. Implement the solution. Apply the fix or replace the item. If a workaround is to be put in place, ensure it will work correctly. So if you do decide to use a workaround, make sure that the workaround itself is something that everyone is okay with, and that functionality of the workaround is going to work consistently. Verify and document. Very important step here. Verify a solution resolves the issue. Is what the solution going to fully solve the issue, or why not? Ensure that the system is fully functional. You want to make sure that you've done your best to make sure it's a fully functional solution. Implement preventative measures to prevent reoccurrence. So there might be something that you can do to prevent this from happening again, and you want to make sure that that's in place. Document findings, actions, and outcomes. Parts used, cost and point of purchase information, steps taken, be as thorough as possible, more detailed the better. To use software related or physical tools that were helpful to resolve the issues, lessons learned. So in that documenting the solution, essentially you're also breaking out what it took to actually support the solution, whether it was human knowledge, tools, other resources. Really important to document that so that you have that in case you ever need it again. So let's do a review of the troubleshooting methodology lesson. The first piece is the best practice methodology. Basically, what is the best practice for solving the problem? Also, identify the problem. What does that entail? Establishing and testing a theory. How do you plan on doing that? Question the obvious. Make sure that you've gone through the process of making sure that it's not a simpler solution than maybe you figured. Establish a new theory or escalate to someone who can support you with additional privileges or knowledge within your company or environment which you're working in. Implement a plan of action. Saying what it's going to take to solve the problem. Verify and document. Once the problem is solved, be sure that you've verified and documented all that it took to solve the issue. So that is a review of the Module 1, What Does an IT Specialist Do? Section of the Core 1 CompTIA A exam.